From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.
At the Legislature today, the Senate Military Committee hears how the series of expected budget cuts in Washington will affect civilian employees of the West Virginia National Guard. The House considers one of Governor Tomblin's bills this week. We'll have the details in this half hour. And we continue to focus on education reform. We'll talk with the chair and vice chair of the House Education Committee tonight on the Legislature Today. And good evening, I'm Beth Voorhees. For the second day in a row, major legislation was introduced on the Senate floor. Among the 7 bills introduced was Senate Bill 371, the governor's proposal to deal with our state prison overcrowding problem. As Ashton Mara reports, members weren't surprised to find the bill focused on substance abuse treatment as a means to lessen the numbers.
The 13th day of the 81st legislature saw the introduction of another piece of crucial legislation in the Senate from the governor's office. Senate Bill 371's summary says its purpose is to reform aspects of the criminal justice system to improve public safety and address the growing prison overcrowding and substance abuse problems in this state. But just like in many other areas, proposed reform can be costly. But Senate President Jeff Kessler says he believes funds must be committed now to prevent this problem from continuing to grow.
I'm hopeful that the bill does in the long run reduce costs, not rather than incur costs. But there will be some, I'm sure, some ancillary incidental costs with probably some staffing, additional staffing for some of the programs that are being supported in the legislation.
Senate Judiciary Chair Senator Corey Palumbo of Kanawha County says the state cannot fiscally provide the more than $200 million it would take to build a new prison. He says instead we must look to the source of many of our overcrowding issues, substance abuse, and help find solutions to treating that problem.
Dealing with substance abuse, it's just making sure that there are resources for treatment. Now, we don't have to build necessarily a facility for folks, but we have to devote money to provide care and help overcome those issues.
But many inmates aren't receiving that substance abuse treatment now because they aren't exposed to the proper programs. There are currently more than 1,800 inmates being housed by the state's regional jail system that were meant for long-term prisons. That's enough to fill one of these Senate galleries more than 20 times. Kessler says because they are in a regional facility meant for short-term offenders, the inmates who need access to drug rehabilitation programs aren't getting them, making them more likely to resume old habits when released.
So if we can cut in half the reoffending rate and folks never go back again, then we'll be a long way towards solving our overcrowding problem.
Palumbo says senators are also looking into another program to help the rehabilitation process. It would release inmates 6 months early from their incarceration term and give them full supervision for those months in their communities. He says the proposal passed with support from both caucuses in the Senate last year, and he expects to see similar terms in this year's legislation.
One of the things that struck me that CSG told us was, if you look at our nonviolent offenses and you say that, our average sentence is 3 years, well, the national average is 2 years. So we're already above the national average on a lot of these crimes. So if we reduce it by 6 months and provide supervision, we're still incarcerating folks over what most states are doing for these offenses.
Still, members from the state GOP, especially some in the House, have spoken out against the bill, saying we're letting dangerous individuals back into our communities before fully serving their sentences. Kessler disagrees, saying statistics just don't support that reasoning.
And, I hope it's just not a knee-jerk reaction that, hey, we don't want to, be perceived as being weak on crime, because it's not. It's being smart on crime. And if the statistics would show that early release posed a danger to society, I am dead against it as well. I don't think you'll find that supported by the data.
Palumbo says he expects the bill will be taken up by his committee sometime next week. Kessler says he will ask the governor's office to look at the fiscal impact of the bill before sending it on to the Senate Finance Committee for its approval. For the Legislature Today, I'm Ashton Mara in the Senate.
The West Virginia National Guard was called on multiple times last year to help aid the state through natural disasters like the derecho and Hurricane Sandy. But now those same guardsmen are facing the mandatory budget cuts that will come if Congress cannot prevent the federal sequestrations. Guard leaders say those cuts won't affect how they help the state in times of disaster, but it will cost civilian jobs. Speaking to the Senate Military Committee this morning, Brigadier General David Bucklew, West Virginia National Guard Joint Staff Director, says the sequestrations will mean the immediate layoff of 56 civil service technicians and the furlough of more than 900 of those civilian workers between April and September. Those furloughs would cause workers to lose 20% of each paycheck, which Bucklew says will impact the state's economy as a whole.
You have to think at the grocery store, at the local gas station. I mean, again, 20% loss of income. It's hard to estimate exactly where the impact will be, but it can't go unnoticed.
Bucklew says the budget cuts to the West Virginia Guard alone would total a nearly $30 million loss for the state. Active military pay and allowances are exempt from sequestration. After a gas line exploded in Sissonville this past December, Governor Tomblin is attempting to make penalties for pipeline safety violations consistent with federal law. As Dave Mistich reports, it hasn't taken long to get the governor's bill onto the House floor.
House Bill 2505 was on its first reading today. That bill would increase the maximum penalties for pipeline safety violations.
Delegate Tim Miley, who chairs the House Judiciary Committee, explains the need for the bill and also notes a few changes that were made during the committee's meeting last week.
We wanted to have our regulations as it pertains to gas lines or gas pipelines to be consistent with federal penalties. And so we increased the penalties. And I think the most important thing we did was not allowing those penalties to be reabsorbed by the ratepayers. If a utility company gets penalized for failing inspections of its pipelines or, God forbid, having something horrible go wrong, then if they're penalized, they can't have those penalties rolled back into an additional rate increase request that would, of course, be borne by the ratepayers, and that is the consumers.
Although Governor Tomblin drafted the original version of the bill before it was substituted by the Judiciary Committee, House Republicans seem supportive as well, including Delegate Ron Walters of Kanawha County.
It certainly looks good to Republicans. The district I represent is Sissonville, and that is where the explosion happened. You know, this bill increases the fines on pipeline safety. They can't ask for a rate increase to collect the fines back. It's $200,000 a day for safety with a $2 million aggregate a year. It's a great step in the right direction, and hopefully as we move forward with replacing pipelines, these safety measures will be adhered to more often.
However, the bill only covers pipelines under the jurisdiction of the West Virginia Public Service Commission. Gathering lines such as the ones used in the burgeoning Marcellus Shale region would not be included. But Miley says there might be a consideration of including those pipelines in future legislation.
In light of this legislation the governor has passed, it has piqued the interest of some members of the Judiciary Committee to perhaps introduce legislation affecting the gathering lines as well, because those gathering lines go across people's property, and so it puts individuals and consumers at risk out there who have these pipelines on their property.
House Bill 2505 advances to second reading tomorrow, and House Bill 2477, which relates to auxiliary lighting on motorcycles, will go to vote on its third reading. For the Legislature Today, I'm Dave Mistich in the House of Delegates.
We'll continue our conversation about education reform at this session. First, here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the Senate today. Among the bills introduced in the Senate today, Senate Bill 369 to provide full faith and credit to a non-resident who has a permit or license to carry a handgun in his or her state when that state allows residents of West Virginia who are licensed here to carry a concealed deadly weapon in that other state. Senate Bill 371, Governor Tomblin's proposal to reform aspects of the criminal justice system to improve public safety and address the growing prison overcrowding and substance abuse problems in the state. Senate Bill 372, to create a criminal offense for intentionally interfering with or preventing a person from calling for the assistance of emergency service personnel and to establish criminal penalties. Senate Bill 374, to authorize the creation and recognition of benefit corporations in the state. And Senate Bill 375, to grant prosecuting attorneys and judges broad discretion in their respective responsibilities concerning the placement of children in cases of child neglect or abuse. On first reading in the Senate tomorrow, Senate Bill 172, to authorize trusts to be applicants for a non-intoxicating beer distributor license and to add limited liability companies to the definition of person in the Non-Intoxicating Beer Act. Governor Tomblin's proposal for education reform was unveiled yesterday as the measure was introduced in the House and Senate. The Senate will take up the measure first, but that doesn't mean House members won't be talking about the myriad of issues while the Senate considers the bill. Joining us tonight is Delegate Mary Poling, the chair of the House Education Committee. First elected in the year 2000, Delegate Poling begins her 7th year chairing the Education Committee. She is a retired educator from Barber County. Also joining us, the Vice Chair of the House Education Committee. First elected to the House in 2008, Delegate Stowers is an education administrator from Lincoln County. Welcome. So glad you're here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good to be here.
A little bit about your background first. Delegate Poling, you're a retired educator. Tell us about your teaching days.
I am retired from teaching mathematics in Philip Barber High School for 34 years.
34 years,
yes.
A math teacher. You should be on finance. Are you on finance?
I was on finance, but the change in proportions of the membership, I had to give up my seat there.
Okay.
But we have good education committee members on the committee.
Yeah.
So.
You taught for 34 years, math in what grades?
High school, 9 through 12.
Okay, all right. And Delegate Stowers, you are an education administrator. Where do you work?
I'm assistant principal at Horseman Middle School here in Charleston.
Okay, that's a middle school. That's over in the Kanawha City area of
yes.
Charleston. How many students?
Right now we're sitting around about 505, 510, give or take.
All right. I want to hear more about your experiences as teachers and as school administrators as we sit and consider the governor's bill for education reform. Have you read the bill? Have you looked at it?
Yes.
Yes. Any favorite parts about it? Anything that really strikes you as that's a really good idea?
I think the proposals to give some more local flexibility on especially scheduling instructional terms and employment terms, most of those provisions are good.
Okay, the flexibility of the school calendar, for
yes.
instance. Yeah, Delegate Stowers?
I would agree. I think that the proposals to give more local autonomy to restructure a calendar to guarantee 180 days is something that any way that we can give local boards a way to have more say in the instruction for the students, I think it's certainly a positive thing. So it's certainly a positive part of the bill.
We're hearing the term balanced calendar, which is kind of a new term to me. I guess it's in essence a year-round calendar, but it just balances out the school year through the year. Is that why it's called a balanced calendar?
Well, there are various scenarios of balanced calendars. Today in the House Education Committee, we heard from teachers and a student from Cameron in Marshall County about their balanced calendar for Cameron High School and then Cameron Elementary School. And it is certainly not spread throughout the year as the calendars are in Kanawha, but it is balanced in that they do take regular breaks between 9-week terms and have it spread across the year a little farther. I think their restrictions are a 46-week restrictions.
Okay. How do you think a balanced calendar would work at your school?
I think it would be very successful. For one reason, importantly, is one of our feeder elementary schools is Piedmont Elementary, which has been on a balanced calendar for well over 15 years. And when those students come to 6th grade after being on a balanced calendar from kindergarten through the 5th grade, it's quite a difference for them. They like it. They like the more frequent breaks. They feel that they kind of have a light at the end of the tunnel that they can shoot for. I think it would work very well at our school. I think that there's a number of research and studies that you can look at that shows that there's a number of positive things that can come from a balanced calendar. But yet, I think the important part is that a balanced calendar in whatever structure doesn't necessarily work everywhere, and that this proposal lets county school boards make that decision themselves if they feel that it would be beneficial for the students.
You do have a feeder school in Piedmont Elementary. Do you find that the children who come to you from Piedmont Elementary, are they better students for having gone in a year-round calendar? Do you see any kind of anecdotal factors in that?
I think trying to compare students, but just because Piedmont has a different type of student that's there, it's more inner city. You have more disadvantaged students, at-risk students at Piedmont. So to compare them to the other students and use the calendar as the only way, as the only variable is probably unfair. However, I will say this much. I will say that I believe that a lot of the research will show that for disadvantaged at-risk students, many of the students that are at Piedmont, achievement in math and reading tends to be greater than on a normal calendar. And I think there's a number of factors that you can point to as to why that is. As you move up the socioeconomic ladder, it's probably kind of a wash. But for those disadvantaged students, there seems to be some positive impacts. I was glad to hear from Cameron High School today because there's not a whole lot of models out there for middle schools or high schools to look at. Balanced calendars tend to be focused on elementary schools because it's easier to implement there.
All right. Delegate, excuse me, Delegate Polling, is there anything you don't like about the governor's bill?
I have some concerns about section in it that would require another set of curricular standards, college and career readiness standards. We're just now developing and doing the training for the Common Core standards in the state. And with the Common Core standards comes a new assessment instrument after West Test 2. And I am concerned that this bill would require yet another set of standards and another assessment. I think teachers are just begging to know what their standards are and give them time to develop good instructional strategies and to keep improving those before something else changes on them.
Delegate Stowers, anything raise your eyebrows?
I would say that I would reiterate what Chairwoman said, that we're getting ready to unfold a new set of standards, and the Common Core standards, next generation standards, whichever term you use. There's been a whole pile of training for students, for teachers, for administrators, on how to roll this out, and there'll be a new assessment next year. So to remake standards before we even begin this one is probably something we should look at, because there's just it would be very difficult, a lot of confusion as to what we do with those standards. I think standards can be tweaked, but we need to give the standards we have in place now time to work.
And if I could add to that, someone might say, well, the Common Core standards aren't the same standards as mentioned in the bill, but the Common Core standards are known nationally as the College Career and Readiness Common Core standards. So they do focus on college and career readiness, and yet the bill calls for another set to focus on that.
I see. How will you approach this bill? The Senate is going to take it up first, but certainly you'll be talking about it. Do you wait until the Senate sends it over, or what do you do?
Oh, we don't wait.
No.
We have individually, as chair and vice chair, reviewed the bill. We've been reviewing it with staff, and then plan to start taking input from various stakeholders, including other committee members and other legislators.
Okay. It is said that the House is union friendly to the teachers' unions. Do you think that's true?
I think we've been characterized that way. I don't find any problem with working with teachers, and what is in the best interest of teachers is also often in the best interest of students.
Delegate Stowers?
you know, I don't know if union friendly is a good term to use. I would say that you know, we do take into consideration all stakeholders. But with that said, I'll also say I think that this year is a new year. I think that this year is something that all the cards are coming together. I think the governor has been very bold. He's put a comprehensive package out there. I believe that there are changes that are demanded from the public in many areas. Maybe not all of areas that have been addressed in the bill, but many areas that are. And I think that we have every 2 years we have a new makeup of the House of Delegates. So to characterize the House of Delegates as union friendly or liberal is not necessarily fair, because it's a brand new House every 2 years. So I'm very confident that we're going to produce something that is progressive, that is reform minded by the end of this session, and look forward to doing it.
You really think you can get this done in the next, what is that, 50-some days left in the session?
I think we have to.
Yeah.
I think we have to.
I think everyone's approaching it with an open mind, and not trying to look at the past, but look at the proposals before us and the possibilities before us.
All right. What do you know about Teach for America? Because that is mentioned in the bill, allowing programs like Teach for America to help fill our teacher vacancies in critical needs area.
From the bill and from some research I've done on my own, it does take, the program takes individuals with bachelor's degrees, takes them into a program where they have what they literally call a 5-week boot camp, and teach the individuals the pedagogy of teaching, and then places them in classrooms.
All right, so it's kind of a shortcut way to get teachers into the classroom.
Yes.
All right. Let me ask you this, because part of the high school area of this bill regards high school graduates to be ready to enter the workforce upon graduation or make a seamless transition into college or vocational school. When I was going to school, you were on a track. Remember, you were on the college track or you were on the vocational track. Are we getting back to that standard? Do we finally figure out that perhaps not everybody wants to go to college, not everybody should be on that college track?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I truly hope so. And I think this is one of our big opportunities this year, is to address the vocational aspects of education, because our economy demands it. West Virginia's economy demands that we have a skilled workforce. I think that we've got a number of things that are in place with our tax structures, a number of things that we've implemented in the last few years. We've done things right to provide a business climate. We need to do more, and this is one of the big things we need to do. And as a middle school administrator, since I've been in the legislature, one of my biggest issues have been trying to put a focus of vocational education in the middle school.
In the middle schools.
Kids end up deciding whether they want to drop out of school by the time they get to high school.
We will talk more about this. You can be sure that we will be present at education committees and keep talking with you about this very important issue during this session.
Welcome you there.
Delegate Mary Poling and Delegate Josh Stowers, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the House today. Among the bills introduced in the House today, House Bill 2728 to allow a disabled veteran operating a vehicle bearing a disabled veteran special registration plate to park in a designated accessible parking space without a windshield placard. House Bill 2731 to regulate the performance of health maintenance tasks by unlicensed personnel in personal care facilities. The bill changes the short title to the Kevin Irvin Community Living Act. House Bill 2732 to create the Freedom from Unwarranted Surveillance Act. The bill prohibits the use of drones and provides exceptions. House Bill 2735 to reduce the number of elective or non-medically indicated induced deliveries or cesarean sections performed at a hospital on a medical assistance recipient before the 39th week of gestation. The bill achieves cost savings by implementing certain quality initiatives. And House Bill 2738 to require the Center for Nursing to use 2/3 of its funds on loan and scholarship programs, and requires the center to report to the Legislative Oversight Committee on Health and Human Resources Accountability. Up for passage in the House tomorrow, House Bill 2477, permitting certain auxiliary lighting on motorcycles. On second reading, the amendment stage, House Bill 2505, increasing the civil penalties imposed by the Public Service Commission for pipeline safety violations. On first reading, House Bill 2314, authorizing a family court judge to order a child to be taken into custody in emergency situations which occur in the presence of a judge. And House Bill 2387, prohibiting the use of Laetrile. Laetrile is an extract containing vitamin B17 that has been used in cancer treatment. This has been the Legislature Today. Our look at education issues at the session continues tomorrow. We'll meet the state's new Superintendent of Schools, Dr. James Ferris. I'm Beth Voorhees. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.